What's going on as far as you're aware with the Arsenal situation with Gyökeres? Because it was about a week ago now, well, Sunday, when there was the agreement in principle that was announced, and the Arsenal fans are getting a little bit restless again. Why isn't the here we go come? What's your understanding? Is there any chance of it breaking down? Is it any word of that? Or is it just a case of structural situations and it's on its way?
Yeah, Sporting are tough negotiators. Again, it comes down to the structure. They want the add-ons to be easy. So there's kind of an agreement on the final fee, as I exclusively revealed, 63.5 million euros, 10 million in add-ons. Those 10 million in add-ons are being finalised. And once they're finalised, the expectation is that the deal will be done. But there's a meticulous negotiation ongoing. This deal I expect to happen, barring anything utterly crazy. And the reason for that is because as soon as the agent waived the commission, it suited Sporting and it suited Arsenal. And that's why I think this deal will eventually get done. But it takes a bit of time because Berta is equally as bullish and stubborn in a negotiation. And I'm kind of surprised because Arsenal fans naturally are hugely ambitious, massive respect for them and their club. But I've reported all along that Arsenal's window would only get going in the new financial year from the 1st of July. They'd lined up Zubimendi, they'd brought in Norgard, they'd secured Kepa, they've signed Noni Madueke that's only pending the official announcement. They've pretty much got Gyökeres over the line. They have Ethan Nwaneri all smoothed out now, despite a few bumps, and that's going to be a renewal. They'll likely turn their attention to a central attacking midfielder. They might explore the left wing still, depending on whether one of Gabriel Martinelli or Leandro Trossard goes. So this is kind of an unprecedented window for Arsenal. And okay, not everything is over the line yet, but we don't have any indications that Gyökeres is going to collapse, Gyökeres is going to fall through, Gyökeres is going to have another bid come in or anything like that. And the beauty for Arsenal is that with many of these targets, they've not had that much competition. Real Madrid never moved for Zubimendi. Norgard was very smooth. Arsenal were the only club in for Madueke. No one else was bidding for Gyökeres or Šeško when Arsenal were in concurrent negotiations. Nobody's placed a bid for Eze yet. Rodrigo hasn't decided on his future. So they've had quite a clear run. Then if you add the volume of business and what will be the total spend at the end of the window, for me, and I know I'm not an Arsenal fan and I respect supporters that are more emotion driven because maybe that's a gauge of the true reality of reading the room, whereas I'm a journalist, so I try and stay boring and neutral. But I can't see that much difference between Liverpool's window and Arsenal's window, assuming Gyökeres and one more box office name comes in either attacking midfield or left wing. Both of the spends are going to be £250 million or more. Both of the volume of business is going to be 6 or 7. Both are going to got a striker in that they want. Both are going to have strengthened the spine of their team. Both have got what they consider relatively good value on certain deals. Zubimendi certainly a very attractive release clause. So I think if you judge Arsenal at the end of this month or when the first ball of the Premier League season is kicked or ultimately at the end of the window, it will all actually make a lot of the noise, a lot of the complaints in hindsight look a little bit premature because I think come the end of the summer, Arsenal are going to have an outstanding window. And at the moment, I have no indication to think that Victor Gyökeres will not get over the line.
Viewers, give us your thoughts, give us your opinions. I agree with you on the Gyökeres situation. I also agree. I often get called an Arsenal simp because I don't, even when I criticize them, I'm not using big enough pejoratives. I think when I discuss them, but I don't think they're in a bad window at all. I didn't like the Noni Madueke deal, and that's a fan talking. But overall, I'm looking at the fact that Gyökeres, I think, is going to happen. I think Zubimendi is arguably one of the most underrated signings of the summer. I just can't believe it hasn't had the fanfare that the other deals have done. I think Norgard at 9 million is going to impress a lot of people. The other deal that
yeah,
I think it is. This is a guy that's just not a steady Eddie. Sounds disrespectful, and it would be if you were buying Norgard to be your linchpin in midfield to try and win a title. But that's not what he's going into Arsenal to do. He's a very reliable, very capable, technically gifted, readily available player who I think will pay dividends for them at like 10 million, as you exclusively broke. Ben, what's the latest with Eze? because I think that's another deal I think that would maybe calm the emotion of Gooners a little bit. Is that something that's progressed anything? I mean, you exclusively broke on the Football Terrace, which is very kind of you, that was one to watch. And then within a week, it exploded. Has that moved forward at all anymore in the last week or so since we spoke?
This move forward on the player side, and I expect an approach to Crystal Palace. Timing is everything. Steve Parish has been in New York. Crystal Palace are putting together their appeal ahead of likely going to CAS. And that may impact certain things too, because if you get Europa League football, the money's a little bit different, and potentially they could point only to the release clause. Maybe if they end up in the Europa Conference League, where they are at least provisionally at the moment, there's a different financial consideration. I think Palace need to sell somebody. Their preference is Mark Gahey, because they know he's not going to renew, and therefore they'd rather sell him now and try and pull off a highly ambitious swoop for Ousmane Diomande at Sporting. With Eze and Mateta, club preference is clear. They'd like to keep them, but Eberechi Eze's got a release clause. So Arsenal are waiting for the right time to speak to Crystal Palace. And it's not necessarily, although they might, of course, a bid. It might be first a conversation as to whether this is release clause or nothing, and how genuine Palace's position is, or whether there's a little bit of scope around the release clause. Eze would be keen on a move to Arsenal. Tottenham not in the race at the moment. They've considered Eze, but it's nothing more than appreciation. And I don't think that will change unless the Morgan Gibbs-White deal falls through. So again, it's another one where Arsenal can take their time, because nobody else at the moment is bidding or trying for Eze. If a Chelsea, if a Newcastle, etc., entered the race, different story. Even Bayern have got some appreciation for Eberechi Eze, but until somebody actually goes to Palace other than Arsenal, they can kind of explore it on their own terms. So I'm expecting a conversation with Crystal Palace, and sooner rather than later, but at the moment all the contact has been on the player side. I think the other thing Arsenal need to decide is, if you've got Noni Madueke who can move to the left, and if you have Ethan Nwaneri who may get more game time through the centre as well as on the right, Arsenal need to decide what their next priority is. Is it a specialist left winger, in which case probably Martinelli or Trossard has to go? Or is it more a central attacking midfielder, with the benefit in Eze's case that he can move over into that wide left area if required? And I think they're leaning towards an attacking midfielder over a left winger first. And then whether or not they add a left winger remains to be seen. Again, it might require an exit, but Noni Madueke clearly hasn't just been pitched for 52 million to come in and be Saka's backup. There's also the ability for him to switch over to that left-hand side. So it's a fluid situation, but Andrea Berta is on it. So this notion that Arsenal are being slow, this notion that Arsenal are not doing anything, is massively undermined by their volume of business already, their spend already, and the fact that Berta doesn't mess about in the market. If there's a delay, it's usually because Berta has a tactical reason for it. It's not quite as meticulous or as discreet or as tunnel vision as under Edu, who had a different way of negotiating, decided on the target, leveraged the fact that it's Arsenal, players will want to join, and had like a hyper focus. Berta's happy to throw out 5 or 6 different options simultaneously, flood the market with a little bit of intrigue, complicate the situation by each club thinking there's another deal that he could do. So he's got one contract in his left hand, he's got one contract in his right hand, and he's got both fists closed. And then he goes into the conversations not really showing his hand. Edu was the opposite. He'd show his hand early, they'd get player buy-in, and they'd say, we're Arsenal, we're going to get the deal done. And often he did. So there's not a right or a wrong, but this is the Berta approach. He's a bit more maverick. So the idea that he's just resting on his laurels and waiting and not doing anything, as some Arsenal fans allege, they obviously haven't seen Berta before, and they obviously haven't looked into his history at Atletico Madrid, because he doesn't sit still in the market. And that's why I'm still expecting a very busy and continued productive window for Arsenal.
Any question, viewers, make sure you get them into us whilst we're live now. Get like buttons hit as well. This is what I mean by football fans. This is what I love about my channel. This is the best comment of the day for me. Terry deluded to think we've overpaid. That's me being subjective, just based on my own valuation and what I would like to have done and how I would like the deal to have happened. even though we got it 5 million under the 70 million, it's just my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with it. You may think I'm deluded, and that's fair to call me out. It's just a personal belief. But as Ben's alluded to, and I'll say objectively, if he goes and bangs in 20 league goals next season, none of us are going to care whether we pay 65, 75, 85, or 105. That's all I would say on the matter. I would now rather focus more about what the player is going to do. And how you know it's a good deal for Man United on paper is that most fans want to focus on the money now, which is ironic because for weeks I've been saying, let's get the right deal value-wise. And everybody said, screw the money, just pay it, it's not mine. Suddenly everybody cares about the money because they don't want to move on to the important conversation, which is the player and how will he help Manchester United. It's as see-through as a freshly cleaned window.